JLD here, and welcome to MSTR today. In this show, we're going to talk about the strategic UTXO, Michael Saylor's version of the White House. We're going to talk about the three types of strategy investors. Which one are you? The 13.5K red Bitcoin candle, the biggest ever. And then we also are going to talk about David Sachs breaking down the strategic Bitcoin reserve on a video. You're not going to want to miss that. This video is not financial advice. And I will say, I would love your comments below. Let me know what you're thinking, where you're watching from. And I want to welcome everybody who's watching from Matt's MSTR daily channel. Matt's video was the first one I ever started watching. It actually inspired me to start MSTR today. So if you're looking for daily MSTR content, Michael Saylor content, strategy content, all things Bitcoin content, go ahead, head over at the link that Matt's providing to MSTR today, or just search MSTR today in YouTube. And I hope you enjoy the show, and I hope to see you as a subscriber over at MSTR today. Let's dive on in. All right, I want to kick things off with the strategic UTXO, all things Bitcoin and macro. This is my friend's bi-weekly newsletter on Bitcoin and the macro landscape. He's going to focus on trends, market structure, technical analysis. He's going to help people make smarter investment decisions to understand the market structure of Bitcoin, which of course has a big impact on all things strategy. He's a huge fan of strategy, which is, I think, why he called it the strategic UTXO. I've been a part of this newsletter for many, many months. I'm one of the 209 members, and I love the newsletters. He kicks out these private videos as well for it, so I really do enjoy what Matt's putting on here. If you want to learn more, I'll put the link right at the top of the show notes page for this video. I definitely recommend to check it out if you want some more detail on this type of content. I know that I love it. I hope you do too. Let's move over to Michael Saylor's post about the White House. He says, "Last night I dreamed I was back at the White House. And in honor of the US becoming the Bitcoin capital of the world, it's now becoming the Orange House. Oh, someday." I think that actually looks really good personally. Michael Saylor wants us to know that if we still have more than one chair, this is your opportunity. So what does he mean by this? Well, there's a video I posted a while back on this channel where Michael Saylor says, hey, people love to talk about diversification. And he talked about a lot of funny analogies about why you don't want to diversify in certain things. He's like, do you want more than one chair when you're sitting in just one chair? When you're sitting down, do you want more than one chair? He's like, no, you want one chair to sit in when you're sitting down. You're sitting in one chair. And so his whole point is like, hey, who is your chair? Who is your bet? Who is the person or the company that you believe the most in? For me, obviously, that's strategy. That is MSTR. That is Michael Saylor. And I made my bet. I have sat in my chair and I'm sitting in my chair. And he's talking to people right now by basically saying, hey, if you're like super diversified across all of these different areas that you don't really necessarily love or believe in that much, this could be the opportunity to come to one chair, because obviously Bitcoin's having a little bit of a dip right now. Could be a good time. We'll see. Chris says, strategy attracts three types of investors. One, constrained investors that can't own Bitcoin directly due to regulatory limits. Two, conservative investors that won't own Bitcoin directly due to custodial risks. Three, competitive investors that want to outperform owning Bitcoin directly via embedded leverage. So now he has a graphic below about the constrained, the conservative, the competitive. They all look pretty similar. Which one are you? I mean, for me, I'm definitely number three. I'm a competitive investor. I want to outperform owning Bitcoin directly via embedded leverage because I believe in Michael Saylor and MSTR. I believe in Strategy's vision and what they're creating. I want to be a part of it. I obviously own Bitcoin as well in cold storage. That is a big belief of mine too. But I would say I fit as number three. Hit in the comments below. Which one are you? Are you 1, 2, or 3? Just put a number in there. Definitely curious. Bitcoin Archive wants us to know that Bitcoin just made the biggest weekly price drop in history with a 13,561 red candle. And as you can see, red candle right here, the biggest in history. Likely not percentage-wise, but definitely dollar-wise. This is what happened right here, the big old drop. You see, we've had a bunch of drops before. Here we go, some big drops, but nothing in the 13,561 range. So could this be a buy the dip? Well, time will tell. And then the Bitcoin therapist wants us to know that this would be flipping insane if it happens. And Mr. Crypto says perfect setup in 2017, massive parabolic move incoming. This is 2017, up, down, up, down, up, down, chop, chop, but still moving up. We are here. And then wheat, little down, wheat, little down, wheat. And then what is over here in 2025? Up, down, up, down, up, down. We're here. Is this coming? Only time will tell. A lot of things are happening in the macro world. A lot of things are happening in a lot of places, but so weren't a lot of things happening back here as well. So time will tell. And now let's move over to a video that Michael Saylor reposted about David Sachs talking about the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And I've learned that whenever Michael Saylor reposts a video, I watch it. So I watched it. I love it. And I hope you do as well. So David Sachs, take it away.
The president has lived up to one of his campaign promises. This is not something new. I remember you go all the way back to his national speech during the campaign, and he reiterated this many times that he wanted to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Sometimes he called it a digital asset stockpile. What we've ultimately done here is both. He also, in his week one EO on crypto, you guys remember I came on the show to talk about that. He asked our president's working group on digital assets to evaluate the idea of a reserve or stockpile. And we made a recommendation, and this administration is moving at tech speed. It's really great to work for an administration where you can actually get things done and things move quickly. We made our recommendation, and then we worked with the lawyers to implement it, and the president signed it last night. But this is fully consistent with everything he's always said. We're not picking favorites, obviously, except I will say this. We do think Bitcoin is special, and I can get into the reasons
explain why. That's a great thing, yeah.
Well, I mean, Bitcoin's the original cryptocurrency. It's the first one. It's the only one that doesn't have an issuer, right? It's very decentralized. It's, in crypto, they call this the Immaculate Conception. We don't really know how it got here. We don't know who Satoshi is. It's almost mystical, you would say.
Yes.
It's the most valuable one. It has a $2 trillion market cap, and it's the most secure. It's never been hacked, right? So we're now, over 15 years into this journey, and there's been a lot of people who've been skeptical along the way, and there's been a lot of ups and downs, but here it is. I mean, I remember back in 2011, I think it's the first time I bought a Bitcoin. I think it was at $120. Now it's at $90,000. Again, there've been all sorts of wild swings along the way, but this thing just keeps chugging along. And you can think of that $2 trillion market cap as like a $2 trillion bug bounty. If there was a way to hack this, there's every incentive in the world. And by hack, I mean like to double spend, create basically a counterfeit Bitcoin, I guess would be the way for people to think about it. And
it is a miracle it hasn't been compromised. I think we can all say that.
Well, I don't know if it's a miracle. I think it's exceptional design.
Sure.
And so I think what you could say is that it's been tested in a very robust way, and there's been every incentive to basically break the encryption, and it continues to chug along. And so I think the price has gone up as the protocol has gotten more acceptance. And this is another point, is that Bitcoin is the most widely accepted as a store of value throughout the world.
Yeah.
So we do believe it should be treated special. Now, that being said, we're also creating the digital asset stockpile. So all the other digital assets.
Explain the difference between these two. So there's a digital asset stockpile. That's the picker. And then on the other side, there's a strategic reserve for Bitcoin, because we do acquire Bitcoin, we, the United States of America, when we seize from terrorists, criminals, et cetera. We do seize these. And then we often make the mistake of liquidating them when maybe we should be holding them. Yeah. So explain that architecture.
So we have the reserve and we have the stockpile. So the reserve is just Bitcoin. The goal is long-term preservation. Think of it as like a digital Fort Knox for digital gold. We want to put the digital gold in there. We want to keep it secure. We never want to sell it. That's the goal of the reserve. And you're right that we've made the mistake in the past of selling this stuff. At one point in time, we had about 400,000 Bitcoin on the federal balance sheet. We sold roughly half of that for something like $360 million. Total. If we had held all of that, it would be worth, just the portion we sold would be worth over 17 billion. So we made this mistake of prematurely selling Bitcoin when we should have held it. We don't want to make that mistake with regard to the rest of it. We think there's around 200,000 coins left on the federal balance sheet, but the truth is that nobody knows because we've never done a proper audit. So part of what this executive order provides is that we're going to do for the first time a government-wide accounting of the digital assets that we actually have. So,
and if digital assets emerge in some department, I don't know, the FBI seizes some, the CIA seizes some, I don't know which organization winds up having them, they're going to be legally required to report that and then put them in the reserve.
Well, they'll be legally required to report it, and then they'll go in the reserve if there's a final adjudication. So, obviously, if those coins could go back as restitution to victims, or if the person who they were seized from wins their court case and gets them back, they're not going to go into the Federal Reserve. But if there's been a final adjudication and a final forfeiture, yes, those will go into the reserve. Anyway, that's Bitcoin. Okay, so then you got the stockpile. Let me just talk about that. So first of all, like I said, we don't know exactly what digital assets the federal government has. I've seen reports that it might have, for example, 50,000 ETH, which is Ethereum. But again, we need to get to the bottom of that. When we figure out exactly what the assets are, we're going to move them into the digital stockpile. The purpose of the stockpile is responsible stewardship. It's a place for safekeeping. It's a centralized, you could say, account under the direction of the Secretary of the Treasury. And the Secretary of the Treasury will figure out how to maximize the values of these holdings. Now, there's a couple of important differences between stockpile and reserve. So one is the reserve, the executive order actually provides that the Secretary of the Treasury will not sell the Bitcoin. Okay, we're prohibited from selling the Bitcoin. There's no such prohibition with respect to the stockpile. If the Secretary of the Treasury decides that it's in the long-term interest of the U.S. to rebalance the portfolio or change the portfolio, the Secretary has the discretion to do that. The stockpile should be subject to good portfolio management, right? And fortunately, we have a Secretary of the Treasury who is an extremely successful former hedge fund manager. So he's going to figure out the best way to manage these assets. And we give him the flexibility to do portfolio management. Whereas,
and
like
he has to live and die with what he does. He has to make those decisions, and that's going to be, part of how he's evaluated by the president. So hopefully he's going to be sharp about that.
Right, but the reserve is different, right? The reserve is just digital Fort Knox. Now, there's one other important difference between stockpile and reserve. So with respect to reserve, the EO provides that the secretaries, and I'm talking about Treasury and Commerce, they're allowed to figure out strategies to accumulate more Bitcoin for the reserve if those strategies are budget neutral and don't cost the taxpayer anything. Okay. So it's possible that we could, I'm not saying that we will, but it authorizes them to acquire more Bitcoin if they can figure out a way to do it that doesn't impact the federal budget or the deficit or taxpayers, right?
And there you have it, another episode of MSTR today. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, drop a comment below. Let me know what you liked, what you did not like. Let me know where you're watching from. Just comment for support. I would really appreciate that. And here is the Moonshot Monday, since it is a Monday here. And as you can tell by this tracker, the MSTR Catalyst tracker, we are just 51 days away from the Russell Index Rank Day to get more passive inflows into MSTR. MSTR World is just 56 days away with the earnings call, which is the last FASB window, which means we will be utilizing FASB. So Bitcoin, I need you above 96, 97,000 by that point so we can be positive earnings for the last 4 quarters and potentially get included into the S&P 500. That is just 57 days away. So looking forward to all these countdowns. Remember that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So subscribe to Matt's newsletter because this guy is going to be kicking out great content around MSTR strategy and all things macro when it comes to Bitcoin. I'm honored that I'm one of your 5, so thank you for that, at least for this 10 to 15 minutes portion of your day. There's a lot of FUD, a lot of haters out there. Let's just rise above the noise, know where we're going, be confident long-term where this is going. And as Michael Saylor loves to say, there is no second best.
What's the second best? There is no second best.